Welcome back to Out Loud, the Selective Mutism Podcast. I'm Chelsea, and today I have an Instagram Live that I did on Instagram, obviously, with Michelle, the mindset coach. I just wanted to make sure everyone got a chance to hear it because not everyone is on Instagram. So here it is. I hope you enjoy it. And before we get started, I just wanted to announce that we have some stickers and pins and t-shirts, all kinds of things. I've been playing around with Redbubble, so you can look on our social media or go to outloudsm.com and click shop, and you will find all kinds of Selective Mutism stickers and pins, and hopefully more designs are on the way. Alright, enjoy this episode. Hi!
Hello! Nice to see you, Chelsea.
You too. How are you doing?
Good, thank you. How are you today?
I'm good.
Yeah, it's afternoon there, I take it.
Yeah, it's 1 p.m. here.
Good. Well, it's a pleasure to join you on this today, and thank you for agreeing to having this conversation. I'm really excited about it.
Me too. I'm glad you reached out. It'd be fun.
Pleasure.
A few people joining.
Hi, everyone.
Hello.
Yeah, so just so everyone has an understanding, so I'm a life coach, a life and mindset coach, and I work a lot with highly sensitive people. And when I found Chelsea's page, I realized I could really relate to selective mutism, and it's not something that I knew much about at the time until I found your page. So that's why I'm really excited.
Yeah.
I have no idea what
you got kicked out.
I dropped out. Instagram just decided to crash on me, so I'm really sorry.
Oh no, you're back.
Yeah, I was saying, yeah. So when I discovered your page, I thought, my goodness, there's so much that we have in common between highly sensitive people and people with selective mutism. So I'm sure that people will relate.
Yeah, definitely. I think a lot of people with selective mutism are highly sensitive, but maybe don't know about it, or they have never heard of that before. Like, I just learned about being highly sensitive, and it describes me perfectly, so it's kind of funny that I never knew about it until, like, this year.
Oh, right. So you only discovered about that you were highly sensitive as well recently. So you knew about your selective mutism when you were...
Yeah. So I've been diagnosed with selective mutism since I was, like, 5 years old. Yeah.
So how did that change? I guess you don't really remember much when you were 5, but how did that change things for you?
Yeah.
The way your
parents
probably helped you through it.
Yeah, I think getting the diagnosis, like, I don't really remember being told that's what it was at that age, but like, for my parents to get a label to it, it kind of kicked off more effective strategies at getting me participating in school and things like that, because we were able to figure out what was going on and set goals. It just really kick-started progress. And
did you notice the difference in both your kind of social life as well as educational at the time? In the gradual...
Yeah. I mean, I always knew I was different. I saw other kids, like, interacting so freely, and I just felt like, why can't I do that? And I think finding that diagnosis, like, it made my parents, like, understand why that was happening. And growing up, we always talked about anxiety and how that's what I was struggling with, and ways we can cope with it and try to challenge myself to face my fears every day. And we set up a lot of play dates to try to create relationships and make friends.
So. Right. So you set sort of or your parents helped you set incremental goals at the time, and little things that you can.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, as a kid, it's hard. You can't really control your treatment or your environment, so it's all up to the adults in your life to set goals with you and keep you involved, but they're really controlling the progress and your environment. Yeah.
So when is it that you started to notice as you grew older that you had that the efforts that you were putting in were more based on your own kind of knowledge, and that you had to start pushing yourself more rather than relying on the adults in your life to kind of organize it?
Yeah. Probably when I was a little bit older. I mean, there were times when in like middle school or elementary school where I would do something that wasn't really a goal, or I just kind of like surprised people. But I think more so as like a teenager or preteen, I just wanted to fit in and I wanted to have friends, and I was able to push myself towards goals that I thought were important that weren't necessarily set by therapists, but just things that I wanted to do. So I think when you get older, you kind of get more control over your own journey.
Yeah. What did you notice about, like, what type of experiences did you have where you felt that it really stopped you from doing what you wanted to do?
Yeah. I mean, I always struggled with like initiating conversations, so I could never just walk up to someone that I wanted to be friends with and start a conversation. And I always saw other kids doing that, and I had no idea how to do that, and I also just felt like I couldn't physically do that. So like that puts a barrier on a lot of things. If you can't even approach someone, it's hard to build a relationship, and that leads to other things. And just simple things like answering questions in class, like attendance, asking to go to the bathroom, just normal everyday things that are so easy for everyone else just feel impossible.
Yeah. How did you what feedback did you get from other people? Was it even more difficult because people didn't really understand it as well?
Yeah. I think it's still not really well understood, but it used to be even worse. So I think a lot of people thought it's like rudeness, or I'm just ignoring people, or I think I'm above everyone and I'm like snobby, or like being defiant and controlling the situation, but it's none of that. It's completely not a choice. I think it's very fear-based, and it feels like you physically can't speak at times, so I think it can be very easily misunderstood, and it still is.
Yeah.
It's unfortunate.
Yeah, definitely fear-based. And and it just makes me kind of question, because you mentioned this earlier, but you were saying selective mutism is not anxiety. So how would you differentiate selective mutism from anxiety?
Because I think it is anxiety. It's rooted in anxiety, but it's different from anxiety, because I see it more of a behavior pattern. It's more like you get frozen in fear and anxiety, and you're in panic mode, like survival mode, and you're unable to speak, and that kind of makes it harder to speak in the future because you're afraid to cause like some kind of reaction, because it turns into the expectation that you're not going to speak, and then once you do, it's like a big event for everyone, and you usually get a crazy response from anyone who witnessed you speak. So that's part of the reason that it continues. And another reason is peers and parents like to protect their kids, like, which is totally natural, and they will rescue the child with selective mutism and answer for them or communicate for them. So it kind of leads to never having to speak, and it just goes on and on and on if that cycle's never broken. But it is based in anxiety, and it's like more like a severe like social anxiety. It's like a little niche. It's kind of part of anxiety, but not the same thing.
Yeah. Yeah, what you were saying there is really, I think, because I can definitely relate to what you were saying about how parents as well as the children don't really understand it, and there's not enough awareness about it, so parents don't really know what to do. So if their child isn't speaking or doesn't seem to know what to say, or not seem able to say anything, then they'll naturally want to step in and help them. But in the end, it doesn't really always work in the favor of the child, because then they never really learn to push themselves and overcome these, right?
Right.
Yeah. And what you said earlier about the like appearing arrogant, and that's definitely something I can relate to. I mean, even now, because the way that I am introverted, I don't have anxiety anymore, but I am introverted, and I'm quite selective about the people that I speak to sometimes, and it's a natural thing. I don't judge others, but I'm quite reserved in many ways, and I'm very kind to everyone and open to everyone. But the people I engage into kind of more extensive conversations tend to be the people I click with, because I'm not really one for superficial conversation, so if there's people I relate to, then I tend to kind of approach them more, or if I feel more comfortable or their energy makes me feel more comfortable, then I approach them more easily now. And people who kind of observe it from an outside point of view can think that I'm being arrogant or snobby, or that I think I'm too good for people. So it's a huge misconception, even now for me, from what I notice from people, what people say.
Yeah, and I would say it's actually the opposite a lot of the time. Like, I always had like very low self-esteem, and I just felt like everyone hated me and everyone thought I was weird. Like, I didn't think I was better than anyone. I just felt like I was the outcast.
Right.
And I think that's true for a lot of people with SM.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, and then as what you were saying also like really hit home for me, that whenever you do finally speak or say something or express something passionately or whatever, and people aren't used to it, when you're a child who's always quiet and suddenly you speak, it's like a big deal. And then I don't know about you, but I didn't really like that kind of attention, because I just wanted to fit in. I didn't want to be made to feel like, oh, all of a sudden Michelle is speaking and everyone look at her and the attention's on her. I didn't really like that. I just wanted to feel like that was
right. And that can make it worse. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, exactly. But yeah, one of the posts that you'd put up really clicked with me when I first discovered your page, and that was to do with being bilingual, because I'm bilingual myself in English and French, and I now also luckily speak other languages as well. But I grew up going to a French school, and since the age of 8, so I moved to London when I was 8 years old. So first of all, I didn't really fit in, because I arrived in the middle of the year, because I was in the States. I was in Asia and in the States before London. We left the States. We were in LA, and we left because of an earthquake in '94. Yeah. So and it was the middle of the school year, so we moved here after we kind of lost the home we were buying basically in LA, and my parents decided to have to start afresh in the UK, because they'd once been in London themselves, and so that's the reason why we moved here, quite coincidentally. It was the middle of the school year, and there was no way that I could fit in anyway, because everyone already knew each other. So that as a starting point was not the best, especially for someone like me. But yeah, and then as someone who's quiet as well and didn't really know what to say, bullying became at the center of it all. On the language front, what I was saying is that because I went to it was like a French international school, and we spoke French most of the time, and I didn't end up learning all the subjects in English until much later on. So most of my time in school was spent speaking French to classmates. And So when I actually spoke English in school was on a fairly rare occasion, either in English class
Uh-huh.
or, or with people who didn't really speak French as well, maybe, or anything like that. So because I spoke French most of the time, even though I spoke English at home because my dad doesn't speak French, um, uh, I there were people who in school who thought that I wasn't English speaking.
Oh.
And yeah, and so it was almost like the cool kids would speak English and then the rest of us would speak French. But it just meant that whenever it came to me trying to speak English, I would just become completely mute. And
Mm-hmm.
obviously, I knew how to speak the language, but I spoke
Yeah.
it perfectly fine at home. But in school, I couldn't get the words out. It just felt completely impossible with anyone in school, really,
Yeah.
except for teachers. So yeah, I just found that really interesting that it's
Yeah.
something that kind of was hidden at the back of my memory, and I like to kind of understand things sometimes, and I question, oh, okay, so what was that about? You know, why one language and not the other? And
Mm-hmm. Yeah. That's pretty common for, I mean, selective mutism is more common in bilingual people, which is interesting. And it's kind of overlooked. I feel like it's not talked about a lot, but it's important to understand.
right, yeah.
Yeah. Do you remember like how that ended, or what did you do to like move past that?
I think it was quite gradual. When I was 14, we had the choice of whether we wanted to continue and with the English system to do exams in English, and therefore, you know, ultimately go to universities in England, or whether to do the French baccalaureate. And I saw myself staying in the UK and doing it that way. So that's when I was forced into the situation of having to speak in English all the time because I suddenly had
Uh-huh.
all my classes in that language, and it changed
Yeah.
things. So I think that's when it started to kind of gradually change, and I was immersed in that kind of situation.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, I don't remember it being a kind of particular moment. I think it was gradual more
Yeah,
than anything, and to be honest, everyone was
definitely.
adjusting. It was a big adjustment for everyone because suddenly we had to start learning everything in a totally different language, and the system is
Hmm.
different. So,
That's true.
but with
Yeah.
yeah,
I always say that there's no like specific point
yeah,
where selective mutism is gone. Like I can identify a point where I was like cured or whatever. It took many years, and I made progress in different settings and with different people and different situations each year. And I think one of the like defining points though was when I switched schools because it gave me a fresh start. And I switched at the end of sixth grade. So I went to a new school in seventh grade, and I was just ready to start over and begin talking to more people. So I started at the new school, and I was still known as like a quiet person, but I was speaking to everyone that I needed to speak to to get through the day.
I think that's
So it's not just one point. Yeah.
yeah, that's really helpful that you had the opportunity to switch like that and kind of start afresh and kind of develop your confidence towards a new audience in a sense. Because yeah, in my case it was a school that I went to from primary all the way up to
Mm-hmm.
high school in your case, so
Yeah.
sixth form in our case. So it was a case of everyone who I knew from the age of 8, I ended up in school with at the age of 17, you know, until I finished.
Yeah.
And that didn't quite work in my favor because everyone remembered me as the same person,
Right.
you know, who couldn't speak. Even
Yeah.
though I gradually started improving, it wasn't
Mm-hmm.
recognized. So all the people who bullied me at the start and bullied me at the end. So it wasn't particularly pleasant in that
Yeah.
case. But in general, I think that because I had no awareness about selective mutism or high sensitivity, and I only really discovered about the high sensitivity traits about 6 years ago. And it kind of made everything fall into place for me. And I started to understand why I had been so awkward most of my life, and why my nervous system was the way it was, and why I'm so sensitive to light and noise, and why I'm so sensitive in my heart to people's energies, and to everything happening around me. At the time, I like you, I felt like I was different, but it didn't come to those realizations till later. And it's not until I became an adult, I guess in my late 20s, I started realizing, okay, I need to start pushing myself to overcome these barriers that I have of social anxiety and all of that.
Yeah.
And that was gradual, but I was very aware of it as well. I knew that I didn't feel comfortable, but I still did it. For as long as it didn't make me totally break. I kind of have this, I call it the rubber band theory, because you can stretch your personality as far as possible, but without it breaking. And I would encourage anyone to try and stretch their personality, because it kind of helps stretch you out of your comfort zone, which is a good thing. But stretching it too far will make you snap. And in other words, it'll create too much anxiety that you won't be able to function.
Right.
So in my case, like with my sensitivities and my introversion and my social anxiety, I felt that it was important for me to try and push myself to be a little bit more extroverted at times, and be a little bit more brave, and speak when I felt like, when I felt too a little bit anxious, but not do it so much to the point where it was going to cause me a panic attack,
Right. It's hard to find that line too, because sometimes you either think things are too hard, but you can actually do it, and other times it feels like you can do it, but then you get there and you're like having a panic attack. So it's hard to figure out what your point is. Which is okay to take risks, but
I think there is a lot of trial and error in it, but self-awareness is really important as well.
Yeah. I think like one of the biggest parts of it is like perfectionism. Like I never wanted to mess up or look stupid in front of someone or make a mistake. So that kind of caused me to never try anything new for a long time. And I think it took years and years to learn how to just not really care anymore about what people think, or about looking silly, or being able to laugh at myself. But it took years to learn how to do that. And I'm still learning that not everything needs to be perfect, and we're all just human, and everyone has their weaknesses. And it doesn't have to be perfect. You just have to keep trying. You get better at things as you try.
Exactly. Yeah. A perfect situation for me that would happen to me all the time, and for years really, is when someone's coming at you with I don't know, a rude comment or quite bullyish or whatever it is, and then you go mute and you don't say anything, and then you end up overthinking it, thinking, oh no, I should have said this and that, I could have said all this, this would have been the right thing to say. And so we end up overthinking, oh, this and that would have been the right thing to say, and the perfect thing to say. And in the end, I don't remember who gave me this advice years ago, but they said to me, you don't need to say the right thing, just say anything. And sometimes that little step is just saying anything. It doesn't have to be the right thing of defending yourself or whatever it is. It doesn't have to be the perfect thing. It just has to be something, at least one word or two words or one thing. And then gradually, like you said, you learn as you go along. So step by step, you start to improve on it, and then kind of think, okay, that's my next step. Then the next goal that I'm setting is to not only say something, but say something that shows some self-respect for myself. And then ultimately you stop kind of overthinking or searching for the perfect thing, because you feel like you've put the right energy into it out of self-respect and self-worth for yourself.
Yeah. I'm still learning a lot about being highly sensitive. it's interesting because once you overcome selective mutism, there's like all this stuff left over. Like I still have a ton of social anxiety. I went through panic attacks for years. I'm kind of past that. But it's like all these sensory processing issues that I've always had, but I had them like tied to selective mutism in my mind for some reason, but they're separate. But so many people have like sensory processing issues, or they're highly sensitive somehow. So I think it's so important to like do your own research and like be a student and learn about yourself and about just anxiety in general. And I think that's why I went into psychology, because I was just so like, I just wanted to figure it out for myself and to help other people. But it's so helpful to like become educated and about your nervous system and about anxiety and why it's happening to you and how you can work through it.
Yeah.
I've always found that really interesting.
Yeah, it raises your awareness, and with that comes self-awareness as well. Once you kind of have an understanding of what it is that's triggering your behavior, whether it's anxiety or mutism or whatever it is, then you can start to think, okay, that's what it is. What are my next steps from here, and what goals can I set for myself from here? But yeah, the sensory processing thing. Sadly, a lot of highly sensitive people do get misdiagnosed with things like autism and stuff, because there are so many similarities between these things, but it is totally different. And also autism, there is mutism in many ways as well, in some instances. But with high sensitivity, so you have a highly tuned nervous system, so the way you process things is very in depth. So your depth of processing things is deeper than the average person or a non-highly sensitive, meaning that you can sometimes take longer to understand things. Although what I found in my case is when it comes to anything related to emotional intelligence, I kind of catch on to things a lot quicker than non-sensitives. But if it's something academic or intellectual, sometimes it would have taken me a bit longer than other people, because I was trying to understand things in more detail. So yeah, that's quite a typical trait with high sensitivity as well. And I guess that's the perfectionism thing that you were talking about is sometimes true with that as well, because we look at the detail in things and we want everything to be right all the time. So we can spend ages analyzing things before actually taking action, which isn't always the best way.
Yeah, decision making can be hard. Definitely.
Yeah, but there's loads of benefits to being highly sensitive, and and
it's definitely like it's good to focus on the positives of it, and rather than all the negative issues that can come along with it.
Yeah, we're better able to connect with people and build deeper relationships with people, and and we can help the world because we have that sensitivity and empathy for people, everyone else, and we want to make a difference in the world, and that's what leads people like us to these kind of careers, because we want to make a difference in the world in an authentic way. So
I think it's hard I'm like learning that it's so easy to burn yourself out, whether it's like socially or emotionally, because you take on everyone else's stress or mood or just their energy. And it's kind of like, I don't know, you have to learn your own limits so that you can take care of yourself. I always tell parents that you need to take care of yourself first before, like, so that you can be able to help your child the best that you can.
Yeah, especially for a parent, you're in it with your child, isn't it? You're on that journey together. But yeah, you can only be the best guidance that you can. But do you find that with psychology as well, the kind of challenge of separating yourself emotionally?
Yeah, I definitely do. It's I work with families actually doing ABA with mostly autistic population, some developmental disability, but it's definitely like you do get attached to families and to cases and clients, and you just want the best for them. But it can definitely take over like all your thoughts if you're really trying to solve a problem. So it's important to like shut it off once you go home.
Yeah, it's the difference between empathy and sympathy, right? And sometimes you're better used to people when you're in an empathetic state rather than a sympathetic state, because you're not going down that hole with them. You're kind of helping them out whilst you kind of stay off of it, right? But yeah, and for highly sensitive people, it can be even more challenging because you have to build that extra level of self-awareness to know, when you're about to enter that state and how to prevent it from happening.
And setting barriers is hard too. Like, I don't know, it's like I've kind of like always been a people pleaser. Like, I just want everyone to be happy and I want everything to go as planned all the time and nothing to ever go wrong. So that kind of leads me to take on a lot and say yes to everything. And it's kind of hard to say no to people sometimes. So you have to like learn how to set little boundaries with people so that you're protecting yourself and it lets you be able to do a better job.
Yeah, exactly. It does help us do a better job. And that's what a lot of people don't quite get. And that's what makes them fear setting boundaries, because it kind of, if they're used to being there for everyone all the time and trying to rescue others all the time without giving any energy to themselves,
right,
then it makes them believe that it's selfish to not do so, when actually
or it's like awkward to say no to someone or say I can't do that for you right now. It's always been hard for me to say no to people.
Yeah, because you don't want to disappoint people, right? But in the end, if they're your people, then they will understand that you need a bit of recharge time before coming back to it. It's not that you're necessarily saying no permanently, like you're never going to give any support to them. And yeah, it really is just the difference between rescuing people and helping them, because you can't be, to be in a state of helping someone, you need to take care of yourself first in order to give from a full cup. Whereas if you're rescuing them, you're, like I said earlier, you're going down that hole with them and you're not going to be used to anyone else, including yourself.
Yeah, definitely. Is there anything else you want? What else?
I was just going to say, is there anything else you wanted to cover, or
that's what I was going to say. I don't know.
If not,
I think that's it, unless anyone has a question they want to put in the chat.
Does anyone have any questions about anything we spoke about, selective mutism, anxiety, or high sensitivity? Well, if anyone has any questions, please feel free to drop us a message to either. And we'll be happy to respond to anything. Yeah, thanks for your time, Chelsea. I appreciate you being here.
You too. Yeah, it was great talking to you.
Same. And let's just continue on that journey of self-improvement, and it's still the only way to improve, isn't it? And of course,
any sibling issues as adults?
In what?
That's my mom asking that question. I don't know what she means by that. Do I have issues with my siblings?
Is it to do?
Not really, but I think what she's getting at is a lot of people ask us if people with selective mutism get along with their siblings, or like they won't talk to their sibling. And I used to sometimes not talk to my brother when I was little, and we're only 2 years apart, but I would avoid him in the house or just kind of ignore him sometimes.
Right.
And I don't, like, obviously I've moved past that, but I think it kind of, like, old patterns last for a while and they're harder to break than new relationships you form later. Oh, she says, do
That's
siblings
true.
understand?
That's true, yeah, because they obviously you would have grown up together.
Yeah, and that can be hard for them to understand, like, why is my sibling ignoring me? Why don't they want to hang out with me right now? So I think that can be hard on other family members. Yeah.
Yeah, in my case, I have a sister, and we're so different in personalities. She's sensitive, but in other ways, she's not a highly sensitive person in the way I am at all. But she is sensitive in other ways, and she's a lot more extroverted than me. And she excelled in so I ended up excelling ultimately because I put in so much hard work and, academically, but it wasn't always me. So growing up, it was very difficult. I was very quiet. I struggled to understand things and to process things, and everything just seemed to come so easy to her. I was very emotionally intelligent as a child, but it's the difference between IQ and EQ, and sometimes, unfortunately, most of the time in schools, your EQ isn't really given any value. So yeah, I did kind of struggle, and I think she unintentionally lost patience with me growing up because she didn't really comprehend, why I wasn't getting things in the way that she was. So there were those differences growing up, and then, in terms of personality, we were very different. But she did end up being a really good support system for me, especially in schools with everything that was going on for me, because she knew I really struggled, and we didn't always bump into each other, but whenever we did, she made sure that she was there, supporting me if I needed it, and if people were being disrespectful towards me because I was so quiet and different to people. So yeah, even though when we were younger, she didn't really understand, as she started to grow older, she could see that I was struggling and I didn't really know how to handle it. And because she had the abilities of verbalizing things better than I did, she took it upon herself to try and support me and speak for me in many ways, in a supportive way, to help me through. So just knowing that I had that support was really helpful. But yeah, since growing up, I mean, now we're totally different, and I see the world in a very different way to her. But it's just about communication, isn't it? It's how you communicate things to each other, because it's the same as a partner in a sense. You're not going to agree on everything, but as long as you can respect each other's opinions or respect each other's personalities, even if you don't completely relate, then that's what really matters.
Yeah. Agree.
And any other questions from anyone? No. Okay. Well, again, yeah, if anyone has a question, just drop us a message. And
feel free to reach out.
It's been a pleasure, Chelsea. Thank you so much for doing it.
Me too. Thank you.
Take care and enjoy the rest of your day. I'll speak to you soon.
All right.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.